Lord Farquaad, whenever he's sending them out, he's like, some of you will die, but that's the chance I am willing to take.
You are listening to Saints in the South. All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Saints in the South. We are on number 30. Number 30.
Big 30.
That's right.
Big 30.
Goal 30.
Dirty 30.
Keep on climbing.
The dirty 30. Yeah, big 3-0.
Yep, big 3-0 here. We trying to keep it going here. So we are going to be in Alma chapters 43 to 52. So we got a lot to cover today. And the title of it is Stand Fast in the Faith of Christ. In the very beginning of chapter 43, verse 1, it mentions that the sons of Alma, that they go out and they continue to preach the word of God. And even Alma himself said he could not rest. I thought that was interesting there, that he had to be right out there with them.
Yeah, I think that more accurately would be said would not rest. He probably was like, you know what, I'm going.
That's right. Like, that's right.
The sons are probably like, Dad, just stay. You're good. You don't have to go out. You're getting older. You've done your part. It's okay. He's like, no, I'm going.
But we're in the 18th year of the reign of the judges, and then it says that that they right here they make the switch and they don't talk anymore about the preaching and teaching of the sons of Mosiah. I mean, the sons of Alma, but they start focusing on the battles between the Lamanites and the Nephites here. And this is where we are introduced to a man by the name of Zarahemna, as he was the chief captain over the Lamanites. Anybody can go ahead and jump in as we talk here. So
just to touch on what you were saying there, Jackson, about why we got the war chapters. Right here we've got Mormon. As he abridges this whole thing, he says, "And now I return to an account of the wars between the Nephites and the Lamanites." And as you said, it's the 18th year of the reign of judges. But the reason we have, there's many reasons why this is in here as far as war chapters go. One is because we do live in a world where there's wars and rumors of wars. We're in the last days. This book is written for us. The Book of Mormon is written for us. We are in a war-torn society, so to speak, as far as, it's happening everywhere. There's all kinds of things going on. But also, we're in a war of good and evil every day. And the devil, if you go through these things, Satan, he uses a lot of these tactics that we see. And we have to learn how to use some of the tactics that, say, Captain Moroni uses in these to learn how to fight against the enemy. And that enemy could be a lot of things, but ultimately it's Satan. Satan's our enemy. So, but anyway, so that,
yeah. That's what I really love about these war chapters, is that the spiritual application that you give to these, because we are again, although we do have wars and everything going on, we are in literally a spiritual battle for our souls and everything. So
absolutely.
I thought it was interesting in verses 6 and 7 where Zarahemna he places specific leaders over the Lamanites. These are Nephite dissenters. Specifically places them as leaders to preserve their hatred towards the Nephites. It's kind of like, because we're about 400 or 500 years in now since they came over. And it's kind of like, a lot of the Lamanites are like, now, why is it again that we hate the Nephites, and why we want to go to battle against them?
You got to keep that going. Keep that hatred up. And and that's a recurring thing. I mean, you'll see that throughout as we continue to go on throughout all these chapters, that it's the Zoramites and the Amalickites and the all the Nephite dissenters. These are the captains of their armies. So ultimately, it even mentions in here they're basically fighting against their own brethren. The Nephites are, as far as actual former Nephites. A lot of these people. So and it makes sense. It makes sense from a strategic point of view. It's smart because these people know the land. They know the Nephite behaviors. They know their homes. They know their territories. And so it is a very smart strategic, as far as just talking about war itself. It is a smart move.
Yeah.
If you want to call it that for the enemy, but it is, you know.
Yeah, and we find out in verses 8 and 9 the design of the Lamanites is to gain as much power as possible over the Nephites. Yep. And then the design of the Nephites is to support their lands, their houses, their wives, their children, their rights, their privileges, their liberty, and they might worship God according to their desires. And we'll see this same theme throughout these chapters. The reason that they fight, the reason that they defend themselves is to basically to preserve their freedoms that they have. So
that goes back to something that Book of Mormon Central, in a video, they were talking about how this all the stuff we're seeing is kind of an extension of the war in heaven. This is this started before the earth was even formed, and so we are kind of seeing the repercussions of this kind of, although all of us were valiant, there's still, those of us who weren't, maybe weren't quite as, what's the word I'm looking for, valiant maybe. And I think Jackson made a good point too, that this was, he was talking about the offense and the defense, how this was primarily, the Lamanites attacking and the Nephites weren't trying to go to war. They're not, they're just defending themselves. We're like, we have our families and our livelihood and this and that and the other, and we're just, we're going to defend it. We're not going to just lay down and let you kill us and take our lands.
Yeah, they're actually trying to maintain something or keep something, and the Lamanites are trying to gain something through, their power or whatever, to get more power over them and over their lands. And Nephites were sitting back going, hey man, we ain't got no beef. Y'all go stay on y'all side out of our way and we're good. But Lamanites can't do that. And it's really not so much as and that's maybe what I was trying to say a while ago. The Lamanites there could have been a little bit more peace for a little while, because maybe the Lamanites would grow tired eventually and say, you know what, let's just keep our land over here. But it's these dissenters that go over and start sort of stirring the pot. And I guess that's what I was trying to get to. Yeah. And that's usually where your problems are. If it's in a ward, if it's in a family, it's always something. It seems like there's always a pot getting stirred by somebody.
That's right. Yeah.
And, through whatever it is, through offense, they feel offended, or they misunderstand, or the miscommunication or whatever. And it's, that's what's happening.
But what's funny is in verse 14 it says, and thus the Nephites were obliged to contend with their brethren even unto bloodshed. So they're basically like this. Hey, y'all want to go? All right, let's go. All right. I mean, if you want to go, let's do it.
Yeah, and it's partly because, hey, we got to. If people start surrounding my house outside, if there's 400 of them and it's me, I mean, I guess eventually I'm going to have to start firing or going out and trying to do something. There's nothing. I mean, I have to. I mean, what can I do? I mean,
which is like back here, I think today that they're like, with the Lamanites, there were the people, if not for the minority that was keeping them stirred up and keeping them, reminding them that, oh, no, you're supposed to hate these people. There might have been peace.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like today, I think we in our country today could have peace if it weren't for the minority of people that are getting everybody else whipped up. Like, oh no, you're supposed to hate these people over here.
That's right.
No, you're supposed to be angry. You're supposed to,
And also compounding that is it's going through the magnifying glass of news media. I mean, honestly, because it's that minority, but yet the media portrays that as the majority, and it makes it even more confusing for people. So. But anyway. We get
introduced to one of the greatest warriors, greatest captains, greatest heroes of all time.
Probably one of the greatest people of all time. If there's a top 10 list, he's got to be in there. I mean, this guy's.
Yeah, you got to think Mormon even named his son. There's a good chance he probably named his son after this guy.
Yeah,
right. And I know, during Moroni's time, it was precarious and dangerous times. The Nephites were unsure.
Mm-hmm.
They're in 46-7. We're jumping ahead, but it's definitely a precarious and dangerous time. But they had a Captain Moroni to take charge and give them hope, and give them liberty. And kind of go off what Kenny said earlier about off of Book of Mormon Central about a battle in heaven. All of us here who have ever lived or who's living now, living in the future here on earth, we're all winners. In the sense of we won that battle in heaven. We all came here to earth, And now the battlegrounds has shifted here on earth, and now we're fighting another war.
Yeah.
And here in the Book of Mormon, we get to learn about these stories right now, and just
To
trying
help
to
us.
fight that spiritual war and physical war too. But just hopefully just and you know, all of us here have potential. You know, we get on the news, we get on social media, we categorize some of these people, but we have to all remember that we all have that potential as children of
Oh,
God,
absolutely.
because we won
Absolutely.
that battle, and now we're
I think it's
trying to battle again. You know, just trying to, you know.
It's interesting you say that, Andrew, because actually Moroni understood that very well. I think Captain Moroni, I have to say Captain Moroni, I guess, just to make sure. But Captain Moroni understood that very well, because he did let a lot of people go under a covenant, you know, of peace. It's like, if you make, he didn't want to kill people. He wasn't out just to murder people.
Exactly.
But he'd give them, he'd say, you need to behave, or, you know, whatever, you know, and we go into, and we'll see. But yeah, I mean, that's the way he was. He understood. He's very intelligent. I love the fact that it goes into Moroni in action, Captain Moroni in action, and then in the next chapter, it kind of sort of starts to introduce who he is. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like how a movie is, where you just all of a sudden you meet this guy and you're in the middle of it. In verse 23, Moroni sent spies into the wilderness to watch their camp. I mean, it's like, whoa, this dude's we're going right into the front here. I mean, here he is. And I love verse 23, because this shows ultimately what Moroni sees as most important. And it says, but it came to pass, as soon as they departed into the wilderness, Moroni sent spies into the wilderness to watch their camp. Now he's watching the camp of Zarahemna and all that, you know, the Lamanites. It says, and Moroni, also knowing of the prophecies of Alma, sent certain men unto him, desiring him that he should inquire of the Lord whether his armies of the Nephites should go to defend themselves against the Lamanites. So this is a man, this is Captain Moroni. This is not just a man of just warfare and this barbarian dude that's super good guy, but this is a upstanding, high-ranking member of the church. I mean, this guy knows the gospel. You know what I mean? And which probably is the reason he's so passionate and understands so well what's going on. But so I love the fact, and I don't know if this is going to be one of our T-shirts, but when it says Moroni sent spies into their camp, but then he asked the prophet also, what should we do? This phrase came to my mind, and I don't know if I'm copywriting or what, but focus on the Lord, but keep an eye on the devil. You know, that's what he's doing. He's focusing on the Lord, but he's also keeping an eye on his enemy. You know, he's doing his part. We need to watch him, but also I am going to the Lord. I'm not doing it on my own. I need the help of the Lord, but I'm also going to do my part. I'm going to watch him and make sure. But I just thought that was very interesting that that's his strategy. He's focusing on the Lord, but he keeps his eye on the enemy. He keeps his eye where they go, you know, and he's just very, very smart, super smart.
Yeah. And jumping on that, and kind of another application in today, let's see, verse 26, you know, to defend their lands and their country and their rights and their liberties, and talk about sending spies and everything. In verse 30, it says, therefore he thought it no sin that he should defend them by stratagem. Therefore he found by his spies, the course of the Lamanites were to take. And so I think about today, it's really sad that states have to put in stand your ground laws.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
To make sure that, like Georgia, we're in Georgia. Georgia is a stand your ground state, which you have a right to stand and defend yourself.
Yeah.
And that couple out there in Missouri that were literally, I think we referenced it before, that were standing on their property defending themselves.
Exactly.
They end up getting charged.
Yeah. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We'll get into that later with the Kingmen and Freemen, because I just noticed how ridiculous it was that these people, these Kingmen, and we'll get into it later, like I say, they had to be compelled to basically keep their freedom. It was ridiculous. I was like, you know, they had to be made to fight for their freedom. And it was like, these dudes don't even understand it's to their own detriment if they don't do this. And it's, I don't know, but it's so reminiscent of what's going on today.
Yeah,
it's just
modern day parallels.
Man, it's crazy. You know, you read that stuff and you go, there's no way that would happen today in modern society. I mean, this was modern society to them, you know, so it's just crazy. But anyway, I'm jumping ahead, but if we get that far. I don't know. There's so much stuff. There's so much stuff here. But, I wanted to make a point too, that prophets know where the enemy, is. That's important to know too. That's a good lesson there in verse 23. Prophets know where the enemy is. And so that's, always follow the prophet, as we've been told,
As a mighty man as Captain Moroni was, he knew that Alma was the leader and wanted his advice and
absolutely,
where the enemies were.
Yeah.
And
and another example of kind of being led by the Lord and being influenced by the Spirit in just your daily lives, the Nephites had body armor.
Yeah.
Lamanites were girded about by just loins.
Yep.
They didn't
have any.
They didn't have anything there. So that's just an example of when you're on the Lord's side trying to do what's right, He's going to inspire you for good things.
I think when you put in perspective what we've talked about over and over, and it's a reoccurring theme throughout the Book of Mormon: physical death, spiritual death. When we get into these war chapters, if you focus more on the spiritual side, it becomes more clear why these things are in here.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter if we die physically. We've said this a million times, but you can't reiterate it enough. Our spiritual selves is what matters. And so when you look at these things, you're talking about their armor. I mean, obviously you go back to Paul in Corinthians, to put on the whole armor of God. I mean, that's what we're to learn. It's not so much about how do I make a shield and a sword, literally, which might not be a bad thing in these last days. We might have to learn how to do it.
Hey, that's right. Hey, let me bring this up. 49 and 50. Hang with me just for a second. And they cried with one voice unto the Lord their God for their liberty and their freedom and from bondage. And in that same hour that they cried unto the Lord for their freedom, the Lamanites began to flee. So they're battling, and they're praying and crying for freedom. So I think of one of the greatest movies of all time, Braveheart. I think this is where Mel Gibson got the idea of freedom, son. Freedom!
It's exactly right. You know what else it made me think of, though, in 48? I was, as it says, they inspired their hearts with these thoughts. This is what, like you said, liberty, freedom from bondage, the thoughts of their lands. It made me think. I think of, and we all know him. He's a member of y'all's ward, but Bradley Mobley. He's always been very patriotic, and he knows the Constitution. I think he about has it memorized. It seems like, but I always admired that, and I thought, I need to do that more. I need to be more familiar with the Constitution and with the Bill of Rights and all these things, all these important documents. These things that are what helped found this nation. And they're inspired of God, so I should know those as well as I know the scriptures. And I think that Captain Moroni understood that principle, and he inspired his followers to understand those principles. And that was just something I thought of as I went through these chapters.
That's right.
So after that freedom part, Moroni commands his people to stop.
Yeah.
To stop fighting. And so Moroni basically, speaking to Zarahemna, gives them an opportunity. He says, look, we can continue, and we're going to continue to spill your blood. He says, or you can lay down your weapons of war and you can enter into a peace treaty, basically. And they go down, Zarahemna throws down the weapons of war and says, hey, we're not, we'll give up our weapons of war right now, but we're not going to enter into this peace covenant.
Yeah. And to his defense, I mean, he made a true statement. He says, because I know that we'll break it.
We're going to break it.
He says, I know we're going to break it. He said, there's no point in me doing it. He says, I just know we are.
That's right.
Maybe not him personally. He just knows his people's going to break it. And so he's like, you know what? We'll stop fighting. We'll walk out. We'll give you our weapons or whatever. But I can't say that. I can't do that because I can't keep that promise. And we got to think what time that today you make a covenant, out in society, it means nothing. I mean, it's frivolous. It's nothing. Yeah. But back then you made a covenant with somebody, as we'll see, because I always used to think when I used to read these and go, really? He let them walk off He just let them go back to his hand. You know they're coming back, dude. What's up?
Yeah.
And it's highly likely that those that made a covenant probably never did fight again. There's some that do, you know, we see, but what I'm getting to is it was a big deal to make a covenant like that back then, and it was your word was your bond, and all these, you know, you hear all the, but actually that was probably all the way up to probably just 100 years ago or less. You know, I can remember my papa talking about how they'd make deals with a handshake and it was just like, man, that today you'd be double crossed so quick. You know, it's just anyway. You know, I got a quote. This is G.K. Chesterton. He said this. He said, "The true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him." And I thought that was so fitting for Captain Moroni. He's not fighting because he hates Zarahemna and he hates those Lamanites. He's doing it because he loves who's standing behind him,
right?
You know, who he's leading. And that's what's happening here. That's why he's not going out and just saying, you know what, I'm not even going to say 2 words to you, dude. I'm not wasting my time, and take him out. That would probably just fuel the fire even more for the Lamanites and all them to go, oh, well, this dude's just cutthroat, man. We're going to take it, you know, even though they do sort of get to that point anyway. But, you know, so Moroni, this is the way Captain Moroni is. You know, I love this.
Oh yeah. Matter of fact, so when Zarahemna refuses to take that covenant of peace, Moroni talk about movie scenes. Moroni picks up the weapons, hands them back to Zarahemna.
Yeah, I love it, dude.
And says, behold, we will end the conflict.
Yeah,
that's right. I mean, I was like, just like, holy cow.
I mean, what can I say, man?
That's
I mean, it's like, you say no, here we go. I mean, so.
And even more exciting and more intense, Zarahemna in his anger goes to strike Moroni, and his one of his guards blocks him, breaks the sword, and then cuts off his scalp. So and then sticks on the end of his sword and says, "Just as your captain's scalp has fallen to the earth, you will fall to the earth."
How bad of a man do you have to be Captain Moroni's bodyguard? I mean, that's pretty much what's going on here. That's right. This cat stepped in and said, "No, you're not. No, you're not." And it's like, dude, this is Captain Moroni. It's like who is Superman's bodyguard? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, what the heck? I mean, I could almost see this dude thinking, what in the world? Where did this come from?
That's right.
I mean, this cat just jumped out of the shadow and he just tore into somebody. But I always thought that was just amazing. This guy, you know, and you know, I say bodyguard. It's not. It's just the guy that was standing there with him. I'm sure probably one of his top ranking leaders, whoever it was.
So who wants to tell us about the great title of liberty moment?
So Amalickiah, Moroni was mad with Amalickiah and what he tore off his coat and took time. I say took time, then wrote down on this coat, title of liberty. You know, it said, "In memory of our God, our religion, and freedom, and our peace, and our wives and our children." And then he put it on a pole or whatever and made a flag. Am I correct? Yeah. So
yep.
Anyways, and that's what's known. Now you see him in pictures, Book of Mormon videos, the picture behind Marcus there, you know, Captain Moroni holding a flag of title of liberty.
Yeah.
And as I was researching this, it did make me wonder, you know, he out of all the things he could have wrote, he wrote those 5 things. And then the order of it, you know, God came first, then religion, and then freedom, peace, wives, and children, you know.
Right.
I think it's very interesting. So
yeah, I think one of the things that made Moroni so mad and kind of angry, because he said he was angry with Amalickiah because, again, Amalickiah, they have just Helaman, they go in and they basically kind of reorganize the church, so to speak. It says that they established again the church in the land. So what I think, I don't think they didn't have to basically reform and reestablish the church. What I picture in my mind is, you know, how today a new bishop is called, a new stake president is called. I think that is similar is going on, where you've got priests and teachers who are presiding over their congregations. Helaman comes in and he establishes again the church in the land, meaning that he is basically calling new people to lead. And I think, and there were a lot of them that didn't like the changes that were made. And Amalickiah was one of those people. And that's what makes Moroni so mad. He's like, he's not a Lamanite that he's having to deal with, that's trying to come in. He's one of their own, you know. And he's like, man, I understand dealing with the Lamanites and our enemies, but now you from within are going to try and destroy what we've got here. And it infuriates him. And that's when he rips his coat open. And then, like Andrew described, writes on it and says, "Dadgummit, we ain't doing this stuff," you know.
Yeah.
And Amalickiah, man, he's a smart guy. Some of the things he's about to do, and he's very secretive.
Well, he uses stratagem too, just like Captain Moroni, but for his own gains and his own purposes. And it works out very well for him. I mean, as far as he knows, he's very smart and very cunning. And there's a whole. I mean, for him to grab the Lamanite throne basically is what he did, and it was all through, basically
deceit.
I guess that it's part of those secret combinations, probably. That's probably part of that stuff. So, but anyway.
So in chapter 48, Amalickiah, he's now king of the Lamanites, and now he's preparing his armies to come again to battle against Captain Moroni and the Nephites. This is where some great leadership principles come into play by Captain Moroni. In verse 9, or earlier verses, it says, while Amalickiah is preparing his people to come to battle, in verse 9 it says, and in that Moroni, it says, and in their weakest fortifications he did place the greater number of men, and thus he did fortify and strengthen the land possessed by the Nephites. So he's building up big earths, ditches, strengthening. He's focusing on the weakest parts of where they might come in, and how I love to apply that today, thinking of new converts, right, or people that are just coming back into the fold of Christ, and spending the most of our time there, or newly baptized members, spending the most of our time there and strengthening them, because they're still so susceptible to Satan and former habits and things like that.
So much.
Go back on the title of liberty, as those people needed a Captain Moroni, we too today need those leaders as Captain Moroni's. Someone to wave. Me personally.
Will you be mine?
Do what?
Will you be my Captain Moroni? I need one.
But there's part of the title of liberty. Some of my notes here. What did he do? What did he do before he went out among the people? He prayed mightily unto God. Before all this, he prayed mightily.
I mean, this is.
And then what did he do with the title of liberty? He just didn't keep it for himself. He waved it to the people. He let everybody know, this is what I stand for, and this is what we should all stand for.
And sent it out amongst all the people. It was on a document, right? He wrote a document, I think, and give it to everybody.
No, he may had several title of liberties made and went and put them on the.
That's what it is. Yeah, on towers. That's right. That's right.
Yep. And go ahead, Andrew.
Well, and the result of that, people sustained them. They started running, like it says there in Alma 46:21. The people came running together. They supported him. He had the support. They knew where he stood, and by waving that title of liberty, they all stood behind him. And I wrote, how could this story apply to us? During this precarious and dangerous times, we need a Captain Moroni.
Well, here's how it's applied to me personally. I think of the title of liberty, how he put it to everybody. And Andrew, like you said, he let everybody know where he stood, right? So since the 4th of July, of course, we've got an American flag pole, or we got a flag pole. We've got an American flag on our flagpole, but not everybody comes to my house, right? And we know in today's society, there's a distinct battle on what the flag stands for and what it represents, whether you want to burn it or whether you want to fly it high and loud or whatever. So when I drive my truck, I've got a flag, and I've been doing it since the 4th. I got a flag on my truck, American flag, and it's waving in the wind.
Waving in the wind.
I'm driving.
That's cool.
I mean,
title of liberty.
right.
Can't get more patriotic than that.
That's right.
And you're playing a soundtrack to Braveheart, right? Over your speakers.
That's right.
No, so let me say this on the title of Liberty, because I thought it was very interesting. You know, we think, why did he rip his coat? There was a lot of symbolism in that. He even talks about it right afterwards, about it being representative of I forgot what my train of thought. Oh, Joseph with the, you know, in Egypt, you know, his coat being torn by the animals, and that garment, the coat of many colors, or whatever you want to call it. But so there's representation there, and that's in the Book of Mormon. But there's another thing that I thought was very interesting, and it says this. It says it was the office of the hired mourners to express sorrow by music, praises of the dead, loud wailings, and other outward signs of woe, such as beating the breast and rending the garments. So when people went to a funeral, they would rend their garments to show, like, oh, you know, the deep sorrow and the you know, whatever. Along with fasting were often combined other ceremonies: rending of garments, putting on sackcloth, refraining from washing the face or anointing with oil, smiting on the breast, and rending of the garments signified special sorrow. So it was a big deal. So him doing this, somebody wrote, and I don't know where I think I got this from, I don't know if it was the Bible Dictionary or what, but anyway, it says, so in essence, Moroni writes an epitaph on his funeral clothing when he does this. So he rends his garments and he rends his coat to show that his great sorrow, his expression of, like, this is outrageous. This is how serious my conviction is. I will die, you know, basically is what he's saying. I will die. To my death, I will fight this. You know, I'm going to fight for freedom. I think of Sir Patrick Henry, you know, give me liberty or give me death. This was Moroni's Sir Patrick Henry moment, you know, to say the least. This is why he rent his coat, for those symbols. That symbolism was a big deal, because he could have went and grabbed a piece of fabric or a paper and wrote it, or however they did, you know, whatever they want to do, something else. But there was a big deal. A reason why he tore his coat was to show the absolute conviction of his heart and how serious this was. You know, so.
Well, there was a
big
tradition. There's a tradition I've heard too of tearing your clothing for whenever something significant happened, as a reminder. It was you wouldn't completely tear it apart. Usually, what people would do is they would tear a hole in something.
Yeah.
And then you go back later, and you know you put that shirt on or you put that jacket on. And you're like, you see that hole. You're like, oh yeah. And it's like a constant reminder of that thing that happened, so it stays in your mind.
And that's like I said, there's a lot of symbolism there. It wasn't just like, oh, this is the closest thing I got, let me take it off. It was the symbolism. It was to show people where they all probably looked kind of like that guy did in the, you know, at the end of Braveheart there. His eyes got big. I mean, that's what happened when he ran his coat. They were like, whoa, this is for real. I mean, Captain Moroni is a little upset here, and he's being serious. So
let's clarify. I might have said something wrong. Captain Moroni tore off his coat or Amalickiah's coat?
His coat.
Okay.
His coat. It's Captain Moroni's coat. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
his own coat. He wrote his epitaph on his own funeral clothing, is what this thing said, you know, in a sense.
He probably ripped Amalickiah's coat too when he got a hold of him.
I guarantee it.
So I think earlier I might have accidentally said Amalickiah's coat. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
I didn't notice that, but yeah.
Well, so which kind of leads me to a question, something that my wife and I have talked about in the current state that we're in. How much, basically, you kind of got two options. Do you just ride out what we've known, what the comforts that we've had, the freedoms that we've had? Do you just ride the wave as long as it lasts? Or do you start actively trying to prolong it, to fight against those people that are against our freedoms or against our way of life, or against the way America, or the principles that America is founded on? You know, how much do you do? I don't know. It's something that I've been battling with for a little while now.
No, we got the Book of Mormon for our days, and Captain Moroni is a good example. So
yeah,
I mean,
I think we'll know. You know, I guess. It'll have to come to a point where the Lord's not just going to leave you confused. You'll have to make a decision. You'll have to. I think we got to be like Captain Moroni, do all the things. You know, pray, fast, follow the prophet, if we follow that example of Captain Moroni, and then surround yourself with good people, I mean, that believe the things that you believe, I guess it'll happen the way it should happen, I guess. But like it's a good question.
I feel like that you make a good point though, Marcus, of fasting and praying and doing all those things to make sure we're not confused, because
exactly,
I feel like most people, if you really think about it in the big picture, most people agree that, well, yeah, it's better in the long run to take action than to not take action, to stand up for what's right. But I think where a lot of the problem comes in is that all these different people who are standing up and doing things are all in their own minds are right. And we might not, if we don't do all the other things, like you said, if we're not in scriptures, if we're not in prayer, if we're not making sure, absolutely sure that what we're doing is the right thing, then we're just, instead of being a force for good, we're just going to be another person causing problems, or whatever. So it's exactly. I think it's easy to do that. I think everybody, like all the people that are fighting in our country now, like everybody's right in their own mind. If you talk to any one of these people on these different sides, they're all, they're standing up for what's right in their own minds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
that's where the problem comes in.
Which gets me back to the basis, the foundation is you can't go wrong teaching and the gospel of Jesus Christ. Bring people to Christ and do as much good as that way.
Absolutely. Bring awareness. I think it comes down to action, and then it's got to be action coupled with timing. So as Kenny's saying, the action may be proper and it may be a good thing, but the timing may be off. And so I think that's what we're going back to your question, Jackson. When do you do that? How do you know when that it's time to do maybe extra, to do more, or to, you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, as we're saying, you got to go back to that following the Spirit, man.
Yeah.
It's because what we might have very good intentions and it may be the correct things, but timing may not be right. Don't jump in there yet. It's not time for that yet, or whatever. And
I think that's one of the reasons that, we are encouraged to be involved in our communities as much as possible. Because when when good men and good women stand by and do nothing, that's when that's the greatest harm.
So you go back to where it talked about Helaman, Alma. So when you start in chapter 45, this is like Helaman's record, 45 through 62, it says. And I love the fact that Helaman goes out and starts preaching and prophesying, and he goes out to comfort the people because all these terrible things going on. And I thought, what a great blessing to have a prophet on the earth today to help us in these troubled times. I think this may be the biggest answer to your question, Jackson, is maybe it's the prophet that will sound the trumpet. For the time, for whatever that is. I'm not saying to go pick up our AK-47s. I don't want to get that misconstrued. People think that we're all of a sudden, we're getting taken down out here. The Mormons are starting up a revolution. We're not talking about that. I'm just saying that, so I guess following the prophet's a big deal. Having a prophet, obviously, in the last days is absolutely essential to have that direct command from the Lord to his people,
So to Andrew's point, our Captain Moroni is President Russell M. Nelson.
Yeah. Honestly,
yeah.
That's true. That's true. I like that. And who his bodyguard is, I don't know. It's probably Jeffrey R. Holland.
Well, we've got according to
Jeffrey R. Holland smashing somebody's sword.
Like
take a scalp.
That's funny.
Oh, I'm sure they listen to this podcast. They will now.
Well, we
we got to remember too, Helaman and his brethren were no less serviceable than Moroni.
I love that.
Yeah. Yep.
So Captain Moroni is physically, and he's a faithful man, and we know by the title of liberty on what he wrote, God was first. So he was definitely a faithful, diligent man. But again, Helaman and his brethren were doing another act of service. They were preaching the gospel, and it said there in the scriptures were no less serviceable than Moroni.
So that's a wonderful point, and it just triggered my memory on something. I have a brother-in-law who did 20 years in the Marine Corps, And I told him one time, one of the things that I had kind of personally regretted was not doing some type of military service, for 2 to 4 years or something like that, just to feel like I'd serve my country. And he brought up the fact, and he wasn't a member of the church at the time, and he's not an active member now, but he said, you have served your country by serving a mission. Going on and teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that's a perfect point that Andrew has made here. That the scriptures point out that although Moroni is focused on preserving the country that they have, so to speak, and the freedoms and liberties that they have, Helaman is focused on teaching the gospel, bringing people to Christ, and they have not been any less serviceable to their country by not necessarily being involved in physical altercations and battles and so forth. So, and that gets us back to today as well. When it comes down to it, you can always teach the gospel of Jesus Christ and bring people to Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. That's cool.
And by Helaman preaching repentance and preaching about God, hopefully that message will, if the people will accept that, they'll have no desire to go to war.
That's right.
So it's
true.
For wicked reasons, but anyways, to move on, Lamanites. You get into chapter 48 and on, and you start to see the way that. So here's something I just wanted to make mention of before. We get into chapter 48, and this is where we get introduced to Captain Moroni. As far as like what kind of person he is, and you know that these are from the records of Helaman. So I'm wondering when it goes into that, and I'm telling you, this was a T-shirt that I had as a teenager. It's like one of the cool. I think probably it's got to be in the top 5 coolest verses or most awesome verses in the Book of Mormon. 48:17 says, "Yea, verily, verily, I say unto you." And think about this. I don't know if this is Helaman's words or if this is Mormon's words when he abridged the Book of Mormon. I want to feel like it's maybe Helaman's words because it's taken from his record, and maybe Mormon put them in right here. But anyway, "Yea, verily, verily, I say unto you, if all men had been and were and ever would be like unto Moroni," this is Captain Moroni, "behold, the very powers of hell would be shaken forever. Yea, the devil would never have power over the hearts of the children of men." That's a
Big
profound
time
saying.
Oh yeah.
That's like, wow, this guy was something else. You know what I mean? And so I thought that was very interesting to see that. And it's just cool to know that also that the sons of Alma and all that we talked about a little bit on our doing a little chat there on the Facebook. About how Corianton is part of those people that were still preaching the gospel and stuff. So we know that he continued on in righteousness and decided to continue on with the atonement and change his life around. And I thought that was pretty interesting also. But these men were out just preaching and doing what they were supposed to do with the people as they kept going. So
yeah, I think you touched on something there, because the scriptures that Andrew just referenced are right after that verse right there. So as Helaman may have said, that Moroni was this kind of man, and then Mormon on his own said, "Hey, by the way, Helaman himself and his brethren, they were pretty stout dudes as well."
Yeah. Oh yeah. In verse 49, as we get into Moroni doing all his awesome. First of all, they've got these breastplates, this armor, these things that they have, these swords. This is from years and years. The Nephites have been advanced in their warfare in this way for a long time, primarily because of the sword of Laban. They had that sword to build their swords after, all these types of things. But then we get to another level of warfare with Captain Moroni when he starts fortifying his cities by heaping up the earth. He digs down in the ditch and builds these huge mounds. And then on top of these mounds are these, as it says, these timbers that they had, where it was even harder to get over those. So they couldn't throw stones and arrows directly at the enemy. They would have to lob them up over these tall walls that they couldn't get to. And that was just ineffective. You don't know what you're hitting. You don't know if you're hitting anybody or what. And then they have the advantage, the Nephites have the advantage of being in these strongholds of just just nailing these guys as they're trying to come up these walls down in the ditch, and they're trying to climb up. And it's just so interesting. So here in chapter 49, verses 1 through 9, and I'm not going to read them all, but this is where basically the bloodthirsty Lamanites, they were well prepared to go to war at this time, right? They said, okay, we're ready this time. We've got our breastplates and our shields, and they have all this armor that they start to put on because they start mimicking and they start looking at what they have, what the Nephites have. And so they start to put on this stuff, and they think, okay, now with our numbers, because they were way more numerous than the Nephites, they thought, we've got this. We can take out Moroni and them now because we've got the armor and we've got the numbers. There's no way they can stop us. Well, when they show up and they start seeing these cities that were fortified by Moroni, they were just astonished. They were like, oh my goodness, once again, we've been one-upped. You know, Moroni's a step ahead all of a sudden. And why is he a step ahead? Because Moroni is looking to God for help and for answers and for guidance. And so the Lord's always going to keep us a step ahead of our enemies. He's always going to give us the advantage if we're looking to him. He is the advantage. And so these Lamanites are trying to do their best to keep up, and they're saying, oh, we got our armor now. We'll take out Captain Moroni now because we're ready. We're way more prepared than them now because we got a bigger army. Well, the Lord's already allowed Captain Moroni and all the Nephites to be a step ahead of that because they are looking to him and asking for help. And so he's saying, here you go. Here's some cool things that you can do. And they're doing it. You know, they're putting the work in and they're doing it. And I thought that was very interesting to see that how if we just go to the Lord, we'll always be a step ahead of our enemies. But I love that in verses 1 through 9 of chapter 49. It was just their astonishment. They come up on it and they're just like, are you kidding me? What happened here? We've never seen this before. And it was just amazing to me. You know, they're all standing there in their little armor, you know, that they've probably thrown together, you know, as quickly as they could. And that's all they had. It's like, can't beat the Lord, man.
Yeah,
you know?
That's right. They thought they were going to be on the same playing field now because they went out and got their own armor like the Nephites did earlier, and then they come back and now they got their face.
I mean, what a great lesson for life. You know, look to the Lord and live.
That's right.
That's what he says. That's what Alma told his son. You know, look to the Lord and live. And that's what's happening, man. This is in real time. This is physical living, you know, much less spiritual. And so here they are, man. They're living another day. As a matter of fact, they said none of the Nephites lost a life on these battles. These first battles, and I think more than 1,000 Lamanites were killed trying to get in there, trying to get into this fortress, and they just couldn't do it. But they go to the first place, Ammonihah. They go there. They think, okay, we'll go take on Ammonihah, the city of Ammonihah. And they go there and they see this fortress. They're like, oh man, we got to back off. So they backed off, and then they went to the land of I don't forgot the name of the other land. There's so many names. Ontai or no, not. I can't remember. Anyway,
Jershon was earlier, I think.
Yeah, but anyway, they try to go to another land that they thought was weaker. But that's where Moroni had put more men, and he put Lehi in charge, which was somebody they feared. And so when they saw them, they were like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" I mean, like it's even worse over here. But they had already sworn and made an oath that they were going to take out the next city because they were already mad that Ammonihah was all fortified. Well, they didn't know Moroni had already fortified every dang city. And so then they were like, well, now we got to go against him because we swore we were, which is crazy to me. It's like, dude, you're going to your death. And anyway, it's just. I just think it's so cool, though. Look to God and live and stay ahead of the enemy. You know, you're always going to have that extra help. You know, I think it's just so cool, man.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I like that. Staying ahead.
Yep.
To God and live, and you'll be one step ahead.
Absolutely.
Your enemies.
So we got the kingman and we got the freeman thing. We got that might be the biggest thing, I think. If we
Tiankum, whatever. Tiankum.
Yeah.
Tiankum's
cool, but
you got to mention Tiankum, man. He is a special forces dude.
Dude, back in the day when I was in a band with Shad and Preston wrote a song called "Morn of Tiankum."
Really? That was one of the saddest times for me too, man. When
I hated when he died.
When you read how he died,
like, I hated when Captain Moroni finally died. You know what I'm saying? And some of the other cats, it felt like an era was over. It was like I can almost imagine what those actual people felt.
Right. Well, and speak of people dying and stuff, we didn't. Alma, man, Alma left.
Alma's gone. Yeah,
Alma left,
Alma.
and nobody knows what happened.
Yeah,
We didn't even mention Alma.
I know. I mean, we got another hour here.
I mean, we talk all highly about Alma this whole time and just forget about his departure.
The only thing that was funny, I had a little. When they were talking about the armies, how the Lamanites they had nothing but loincloths, and the Nephites were. It's really significant to me how it's the image of what a righteous leader is. How the Moroni, cared about his people. He wanted them to be protected. He wanted them not only to be able to fight, but he wanted them to be able to be defended and hopefully survive the battles.
Exactly.
Whereas, the Lamanites, it was like Lamanite leaders are just sending them out. They're just like, they give them a weapon. Okay, like armor, here's a loincloth.
Yeah.
And it kind of chuckled. It reminded me of Shrek, That's crazy. Lord Farquaad, whenever he's sending them out, he's like, some of you will die, but that's the chance I am willing to take. That's what it made me think of. That's how the Lamanite leaders are. The Lamanite captains are like, some of you may die, but that's the chance I am willing to take.
That just it's just it's the selfishness of the Lamanites.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's really all it is. They didn't care.
All right. Well, obviously we've had a lot to cover, and we could not cover everything that we wanted to. So be sure and do your own studies. And until next time, y'all keep on striving.